Bum Podcast.
Bum Podcast.
Between you and me.
Between you and me.
All right. So today we're going to talk about a concept that was developed years ago, and I've been through it a couple of times, and I think it's befitting that we jump into it and kind of, I guess get started by explaining a little bit where it is. I'll give the origin of it. Right. I know it's something that you've adopted and adapted because I know we talk from time to time. You talk about how you're talking to your friends and your cohort about the VAVO shift, and so just want to I'm gonna give just a brief background on it, I guess, and then want to hear from you how you've been able to utilize the concept, and then just I guess land on where we are now if it pertains to our life, which I think it does. How does that sound?
All right, that sounds good to me.
All right, cool. So,
yes, sir.
way back years ago, decades ago, I used to work at Kmart, I think it was, when I came up with this concept. And I've always, well, I can't say always, but several times over my careers, I've run into people who were stuck in a job, stuck where they were, and not necessarily happy about where they were. And because they were stuck in that position for so long, they were almost frozen or powerless to be able to make any significant change in their lifestyle. And so I developed this concept to kind of start talking to people to help them to kind of shake loose and figure out a way to move from where they were to where they're trying to be. And that's what I think life is always about, moving from where you are to where you're trying to be, because if we're not careful, we all can easily get stuck somewhere or misguided and sent somewhere. And then one day we wake up and realize we're not really happy with where we are, but we don't know how we got there and don't know how to leave. It's almost like Who Moved My Cheese, man. That's funny. Great so anyway, yeah, the book, which is a great book. So if you haven't read it, man, read it. Who Moved My Cheese? Because it talks about getting stuck and, some of the characteristics of getting stuck. But anyway, so the VAVO, VA/VO shift is about making your vacation your vocation. Making your vacation your vocation. And I remember vividly talking to the first person I talked to about this. I was in Sharonville, Ohio, and talking about how she could start making money in her hobby and banking the money in her hobby while shifting from spending free time doing nothing to making her hobby her full-time job and allowing her to then be released from her vocation or where she was working. Don't know to this day if she ever adopted it or used it in her life, but I have since that time refined it a little bit and actually even put it to work in my own life. And it has worked out for me. It's funny. I could tell you about a time in my life where it worked out, not necessarily in the physical, but it worked out in the mental. And it was extremely impactful in that regard. So I was working for this organization, won't call no names. And I was stuck. I don't know if stuck is the right word. But I was feeling itchy and anxious about being somewhere else, doing something else. And you remember that?
I do.
And so it's funny because I talked to some of my close coworkers about it, and I was saying I'm giving myself 30 days, and I'm gonna shift up out of here. It's gonna be a VAVO shift. I'm gonna give myself 30 days. And I remember close to the end of that, they was afraid that I was about to walk off the job, and I never did. But I did make a shift, and that was funny. But it was a mental shift. I fully expected it to be a physical shift, and it wasn't. But the mental shift was more powerful than a physical shift could have ever been. And I remember the very first day when I decided to do it, it was 4 a.m. and I found myself sitting in somebody's office at 4 a.m. because I had a report that was due that I needed to get in and get cranking on. And thinking about the fact that there are so many things in my life that I wanted to do that weren't associated with the job that I currently had, that I didn't get around to doing. And then the thought hit me: how can you get up at 4 a.m. to go to work for somebody else, but you won't get up at 4 a.m. to go to work for yourself? And that was the big question. And so for those who listening, that is the question. Like, how can you get up every day out and day in, and go to work for somebody else, and you won't get up day out and day in to go to work for yourself? Because that could be the one thing that's keeping you from making that shift. So I'm gonna let you jump in now, and I'll come back and tell you what happened later if it comes back up. Yeah.
What am I jumping in on?
I mean, the VAVO shift, what it's meant to you, how it's played out in your life, or
So I will say, well, there's a couple things. If I'll be able to remember both, we gonna see.
But we'll see.
That jumped out that you talked about. Of course, the getting up at 4 a.m. to work for somebody else and not being willing to do the same thing for yourself. That was always a powerful statement to me. That I find, and I kind of had, even a moment recently in my own life where I started doing work, I was starting to get money, and I just had this realization of like, dang, this is almost all that is expected of me for the rest of my life. Like, this is the general expectation of the world. Society tells us, you get a job, you just go to work, you make money, and now you can live.
Right.
And that's pretty much what that bare expectation was. And I remember having a moment like, but I want so much more. And so that means I have to I'm doing what it takes to be bare minimum. But if I want to go above bare minimum, that means I have to put in more work. I have to put in more effort, and find ways that I can use my time so that I can begin this whole process of the VAVO shift, as you talk about. So because the job was kind of related, it was a music job, but it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. So I'm like, I have to start doing what I want to be doing in order for me to start getting paid to do what I want to do.
True that.
And so I had a moment of that. The other thing that jumped out to me about what you said was the whole, it was a mental change, right? Yeah, you were expecting it to be a physical change, but it became a mental change first. But yet that's still so important. I was reading an article earlier today, actually, and they were talking about, of course, I like reading a bunch of stuff about productivity, ways to be more productive, ways to frame your thinking so that you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. And so today, let me see if I can keep following this train of thought. But today, I was reading an article talking about how a lot of times we struggle with developing the habits and the things necessary in order for us to achieve the success we want, because we spend so much time focusing on fixing the symptoms instead of fixing the actual problems, right? So a lot of times that can look like the symptom might be the physical change, right? You think, okay, I just need to make this physical change, and I've done it, now I'm good, and now I'm on the right path, where really it's about changing on the inside first, right? You have to address those actual problems, and then you'll start to see that those symptoms start to diminish. And the guy in the article he was talking about, he basically had, and I'm not a doctor or nothing, I'm not a science guy, I'm a music guy, but basically he was having a sinus problem. He had a problem internally that was blocking off his nasal passages. And so for years, he said for like 30, 35 years, he was taking all kinds of sinus medicines and finding new treatments and things to deal with the sinus stuff. But he never, but eventually, he said his wife talked to him, and she told him that he should go see like an ear, eye, nose doctor, to find out what the problem really is. And so he went in, he started talking to the doctor, and the doctor posed to him this question. And the question was, now imagine you're an athlete, right? Imagine you're an athlete and you come in and you have say, a torn meniscus, and you come to me and you ask me to help you with your torn meniscus, and how can I help you solve this problem so that you can use, basically, so that your body functions the way that you want it to. And when you ask me to help you, I give you a band-aid. Does that solve the problem? No, you're just addressing something on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you actually want to dive into it and address the problem. So when we're talking about VAVO shift and mentality, that's really what it is. It's a mentality first, right? And I think that's huge, especially in my age range. I've met a lot of people, or I'll at least say a decent amount of people that have this vision of life where it was okay, you know, went through school, you got to college, live it up in college, and now it's just like, okay, find a job and work that job for the rest of your life. And, that's what life is. When really, first you have to, adjust that mentality of what more, like, I can make my life more. It's up to me to make that decision. So how can I do things to take control of that process? So that's
So
what the VAVO shift is to me, I would say.
I like that. I like that. And interestingly enough, when you first made the statement, the thing that came to mind was Band-Aid, because you're right. Most of the time we spend our life actually trying to fix the symptom, but
Right.
never the problem. Right. So it's bleeding and I wipe the blood off, but I never put any antibiotic on the sore,
Right.
or it's bleeding and I cover it up with a Band-Aid, but I never put any antibiotic on the sore. And so that was powerful. And that's a powerful visualization of what we're actually talking about. And even what you're talking about, being in college, and it's easy to go down that route of going to college and thinking that the college education is why you went, right?
Mm-hmm.
If as a person, and I know universities, colleges and universities, they're in the business to make money to educate, right? And so
Right.
make money to educate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not
And
necessarily, huh?
I was just gonna say, and you find that sometimes making the money becomes the bottom line
There you
instead
go.
of the educating becomes
There
the
you go.
bottom line.
There you go. There you go. And so in some cases, we become dependent upon what they're feeding us,
Right.
um, instead of utilizing what they are feeding us to grow ourselves. And so what that looks like is if you go to school and you got a curriculum and that curriculum tells you you're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and you do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and you graduate with a 4.0, and all you've gotten from that experience was doing exactly what it was that they told you to do, you actually missed out on the most important lesson that you should have got in college, which is how do I apply A, B, C, D, E, F, and G to what I want to do with my life so that I can come out with another outcome. And so sometimes down the road, instead of having these grandiose ideas of what I'm going to do when I grow up, if that's how we want to say it, we get to college and we find out that what they're teaching us kind of runs contrary to what our mentality was in the beginning. And we change our mentality as
Right.
opposed to adapting and adopting our mentality so that those tools can enhance what we already have in our mind. And so that's why when you graduate, you feel like it's that dead end job that I got to go to because that's what I've been taught to do. And that's what I taught success. That's what I've been taught success was. That was a tangent I didn't mean to go on, but that it hit me like that. Right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it reminds me of something that you used to say, at least semi often, right? That was always impactful to me, and that was that you would say college is a tool, not a ticket,
There it is.
right?
It's a,
And so we go in, yeah, and I would see a lot of that on campus at school. Just a lot of people going in and just trying to take what was given to them, right? Whatever it was they learned, maybe in class, what they got from the professor, and they would take that information and they had that, but then they would complain about not having more.
mm-hmm.
And really, where yes, you can go in and you're learning from a professor and you're taking what the professor is giving to you and what the curriculum is giving to you, But really, it's more important, like you said, to learn how to apply that, use that as a tool, because just having the knowledge, like having being taught the knowledge itself, isn't enough,
Right.
right? That's just not going to transport you to where you want to be. It's how you then plan out and decide to use what you've gained and use what you've learned. Once you start doing that, then you can start taking steps to get there, because you're not just going to end up there automatically.
Mm-hmm. And that really is about taking ownership, and it's taking ownership of your process.
Mm-hmm.
It's about taking ownership of your education, because again, it's a tool. It's a tool, and like you're paying for a tool. It's no different than going to the store and I buy a hammer, right? If I buy a hammer and I read what the package says the hammer does, and I walk around my whole life looking for exactly what they said on the package the hammer does, but I never take it back and use it on the nail that I was trying to hammer in at home because my address ain't on the package. You know what I'm saying? You lose it. You really lose it. And so it really is about using it as a tool and not just a ticket. And that gives people a false sense of security as well, because we're taught that if we go to college and we get a college degree, then that's a measure of success. And when we do it and we don't realize that measure of success, we feel like we missed something or we lost something. No, you misapplied it is what has happened. So, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole that we can go down. That does apply to the VAVO ship, but not necessarily exactly.
All right.
But it is a symptom, and it is a cause that gets people to a place where they have to make a VAVO shift. I know even particularly growing up, if you don't have a specialized interest or a specialized field that you're going into, when you go to college, people tell you get into business because business is a common sense degree, right? And so you can go to school and get a degree in business and still can't do anything with it because it's not really a part of who you are, not really a part of your makeup. Yeah, it can make you better, but you got to know who you are in order to use it to make you better.
Right.
So, in my case, again, going back to my VAVO shift, when I said it was a mindset, what actually happened was I was physically looking to leave that place and launch out and do something totally different. But again, my mentality, my mind wasn't ready and prepared to do it. And so I used that 30 days driving hard to make a physical change. But because I was driving so hard to make a physical change, I started embodying the mental change that it took to do it. And then I started doing it bivocationally, which is a term meaning I did it alongside of still working. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
And would you say that's a important part of that shifting process?
It is. It really is. Unless you're working at a place where you can't, and I know a few professions where you got to solely do that and you can't moonlight or venture out because of regulations. Unless that, I mean, I think it's a perfect example. I'll use two things that are low hanging fruit. Like, say, for instance, police officers, right? Never been a police officer, never wanted to be a police officer. But what I know about some police officers, they moonlight as security guards.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or I know people who are firefighters, and they moonlight as maybe ambulance drivers, or they moonlight as maybe security or safety patrols at large events. This is not stuff that they do on their day job, right? But the skills that they developed and the certifications and stuff that they have developed from their day job, they were able to then take that and use it to make money in another line of work, in another thing. And so if you look at it from that perspective, any job you take, you should identify something in that job that is helping to build a skill or give you a tool, tip, or technique to help you in what you want to do in life, right? And so in order to then take what you're getting there and then use it to build your vacation, I mean, that's a perfect scenario. That's a perfect scenario. I mean, I think it was James Brown said, use what you got to get what you want. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a perfect scenario.
All right. So if you're looking to get into a VAVO shift, what do you think what's the first place you start, I guess?
I mean, the first thing you really should do is sit down and go back to the root of things. I'm gonna plug a book that I wrote. Believe it or not. All right. Matter of fact, dare I say the VAVO shift might have been a part of why I was even able to write that book. It may have been because I started dealing with things and bringing it up to the surface. That then I was able to easily regurgitate it. And so the book is called Radical Introductions Beginning by Going Backwards. And I think that's where you start. You start by going backwards. You start by just shedding off of everything that you obtained that make you think that you're somebody. Okay, make you think you're somebody. I'm gonna put it like that bluntly. Degrees, certifications, ranks, all this stuff that have been given to you that you use to give you the sense that I am somebody. You have to set all of that aside and deal with yourself. The same person that you're looking at in the mirror, the person that you are with when nobody else is with you, and assess yourself and assess what is it that is that burning question in my mind, in my heart. What is it? Like I used to try to tell people, if you want a key to know what you were created to do, look at what hurts you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so look at what that burning thing is. What problem exists in life that I wish somebody would come up with a solution because it bothers me just that much. I know for me, that was one of my defining moments when I saw something and I was like, man, somebody got to do something. And then that internal compass said, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so, but if we are comfortable with what other people have told us that we are, and if we're comfortable with other people have told us that we are supposed to be doing, we sometimes dull that moment when our internal compass is telling us that we should be or should be doing something differently. And so that's why it's important to just shed everything, sit in with yourself and try to figure out what's that yearning, what's that burning thing. So if you want to start with a VAVO shift, that's the first thing. I always tell people again, if you're looking for what your purpose is, you innately, you like to do it and you do it well. And let's just say for you, for instance, with you, like with music, right? That's the thing that like is really, really burning and yearning with you. And so that's the things you ought to put at the top of mind, right? Another technique that follows along the same thing is when you figure out what you want out of life, write it down. Mm-hmm. Write it down. So you asked me for a step. So the first step is shed everything that other people have told you makes you important, right? The second thing is sit down with yourself and figure out what is important to you. What is it that you want out of life and write it down. The third thing is put it over your door. Put it over your bedroom door, put it over your door walking out of the house. I mean, some people say put your goals on the mirror. You can put it over your mirror. Your every waking moment, you want to know what's important, what you want out of life. Because when you figure that out, then everything you do every day can either drive or contribute to that. Okay. So that's the starting point for a VAVO shift.
All right. So figuring out what you're trying to do, what that goal is, and then now making sure you always have something to remind you of that goal.
Right. Because honestly,
you're maintaining that mentality.
You're maintaining that mentality. So think about it from this perspective. Like, just say I'm not a DJ, but just say I was a DJ. You're a DJ, but I'm gonna talk about me being the DJ because I DJ'd once. Okay. And it turned out all right, but it ain't an experience that I want to go back and do again. If that makes any sense. But you say you agree. You didn't hear me.
I remember.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, you're so busy you couldn't DJ, so I went DJ for you, man. It just didn't work out. In my mind, I could do it. Right. But it ain't as easy as it seems. But anyway, but what happens is if I have something like that I'm moving toward because this is what I like to do, this is what I love to do. And then I'm not making enough money to pay my bills, right? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna start focusing on paying my bills. And it will pull me away from that thing that I'm yearning and burning to do. And that's what you're trying to avoid. Naturally, you'll be pulled away from it, but you want to make sure that you got a constant reminder. Like if you get ready to walk out of the house stressed, right? Realize why you're going to do what you're doing. It's because I'm trying to get back to what I want out of life. Right. Not because I'm just going out here to pay a bill. No, it ain't about paying the bill. It's getting back to what I want out of life. And that's what's important to be in the forefront of your mind if you want to make a viable shift. It's got to be, you got to always be present with the thought of, I'm doing this so I can get to my vacation full time.
Okay.
You had a question?
Oh, did I have a question?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't have a question. I was
Okay.
I was just following with you.
Yeah, and so
I was just
that's the
following.
thing. That's the important thing about the viable shift. Because I mean, we got to work our vocation. We got to work our vocation because we got to pay the bill. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But you don't have to be stuck paying. I mean, you don't have to stuck doing something that you don't have to be stuck doing something that you hate to do simply to pay the bills. What you have to do is you have to repurpose yourself so that instead of sitting there watching TV all night, saying you're decompress doing what you love. If you like taking pictures, right? When you get off of that 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever that is, or even if it's an overnight shift, if you know, I love taking pictures and I wish I could get to taking pictures, that should be something that brings you joy. That should be something that adds dopamine to your mind, right? I mean, to your brain, right?
Right.
And so you can go and spend another 2 to 3 hours doing that if it gives you energy and you're building your skill set. Eventually, what you'll find yourself doing is making money doing that thing and enjoying it, right? And then the key to it, the big key to it is, and I'm gonna give you in terms of percentages. The key to the VAVO shift is this: you're making 100% of your money on your vocation and 0% of your money on your vacation, right? And so as you start doing your vacation and making money, all you're doing is banking that money. You don't spend it. You don't use it to pay bills. You don't, all of your money you're putting into the bank, because what we're eventually trying to do is move down to making 75% of our money on our vocation and 25% on our vacation. 50% on our vocation, 50% on our vacation. Then we flipping the script. We're going 75% vacation. Now you're going to part-time for real on your vocation. Right. Until eventually you're making enough money to sustain you 100% on your vacation. And if you got a part-time gig for your vocation, you're banking it. That's the key to the VAVO shift.
Right. So, and it's funny that you say that. I was actually talking to a friend of mine last night who is also a DJ. But he was just talking about what he's been going through with the DJing and how he's been trying to build up his business. And right now he lives with his parents.
Okay.
But the thing was, I know he makes a decent amount of money off of DJing, but he was talking to me about the other stuff that he's been doing, right? He's been teaching DJing. He's been like, just these other things that he's been doing. And so my question for him was, so then what is your goal? Because I know you're doing pretty good on the business side. What are you doing these other things for? And he was saying he's trying to build up his savings to a place where he has a certain amount for his emergency fund. And he knows once he does that, then he can move out on his own. He could do these kind of things with his business. But it was really, for one, it's always cool to hear people that have a plan and hear how people make their plan work for them. I always like hearing that because it helps inspire your own plans and your own view of things. But especially hearing that from somebody, which he's a little bit older than me, but like in this age range, that was good for me to see. And a question that naturally comes up for me when we're talking VAVO shift, right? Making the vacation the vocation is, how do you maintain energy, I guess, is a question that rose for me. How do I maintain energy to be doing things for my vacation when I might have been going through the stress of working my vocation for this whole day or these whole weeks, things like that. Now, you had something you wanted to say about that?
Well, it was a rhetorical question.
I mean, it'd be great to hear what you have to say about that as well. I was going to talk about something that kind of clicked for me a little bit.
Go ahead.
Which I think I talked to you about this the other night, actually. But I was working an event. I believe it was last weekend. It was last weekend. I was working an event. I was running sound for, what do they call it? basically it was basically a conference,
Okay.
right? I was running sound and all that for the conference, and I was out there, and the people was getting on my nerves. They was getting on my nerves. They was really working my nerves that day, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
And that happens.
so, right, and that happens. But then, like some of the things that bothered me was like, I just feel like I'm doing the most work. I feel like I'm the only person that like is like I feel like I'm supposed to be like coming up with the answers, when
Mm-hmm.
really somebody should have the answers, but I have to go figure that out. And I had a moment where I was like, I need to reframe my thinking of what am I trying to achieve by being here, right? The reason, and I realized like the reason that I was working the hardest is because I mean I was running sound, I was working with music, I was doing those things, and I enjoyed doing that. And so it was finding the things that I was trying to get out of doing that work and things that I could apply to my vacation stuff as well. So when
Mm-hmm.
I'm going and I'm working on my vocation, I started trying to shift my thinking of, all right, it's not just me putting in my time to get in return a resource, to get money in return. It started becoming, all right, what can I also gain from this job, working in this vocation that I can apply to my vacation to help me with that process of transitioning things. And when I started thinking about that, for one, immediately I was less annoyed because it's like, okay, now it's kind of becoming exciting. You know, finding different ways that, okay, I can gain this skill, or maybe I can talk to this person and I could use that to get me to where I want to be. And that made the process a little bit more exciting. So that I found. Now, would you say it's different for you, or what would you say helps you to conserve that energy so that you can put that towards your vacation as well?
So for me, and I'm gonna I think I'm gonna touch on a couple things. For me, it's again keeping in front of me what I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, when you get bogged down, you can lose sight of it. And that's for me. Like I know I've been inundated this calendar year. I've been inundated. And I know in the back of my mind there's some things I'm trying to accomplish, but I've been inundated. And I haven't had it written down anywhere. And so I had to actually pull out my whiteboards and like, okay, I need to start writing this stuff down because I need to physically see it. Because if I don't physically see it, life is happening at such a fast rate right now that I'm going to lose it. And that's the problem. And when we lose it in the beginning, it's still there, but we lost it. And if we let a year go by, imagine how much stuff is piled up on top of it that we got to get back to. So for me, I'm going to go back to, I got to physically write that stuff down so I can see it, so that it'll always be ever present. And it is almost like my conscious. Like in my conscious, I have something mentally that's saying you need to get back to that. But every time I see it, it's jumping off that whiteboard saying, don't you supposed to be taking care of me? Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is important. I will tell you, based on what you just said, I know when I was in corporate and I was managing individuals, the one thing that I would always tell them, and this is always came in week one, if at all possible, day one, is you need to figure out why you're here, right? You need to figure out what it is about being here you want to get out of it to use in your personal life, which is really an unorthodox way of talking to an employee if you're managing them. But my thing was this. If you don't figure out a reason to come to work every day that's personal to you, you're going to lose your reason for being here. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is you can come in one day and you can try to figure out what I want, what me, your manager wants, and you try to do everything in your power to please me. And I don't accept it. You're going to be crushed and you're going to think you wasted 8 hours being here, right? I said, but me not accepting what you gave me may have absolutely nothing to do with you or your performance. It can have everything to do with what has been going on in my house. And that day when I came to work, I'm just in a funky mood and ain't nothing that's going to happen today that's going to be good to me. And this is the day that you decided to come in and give me the best of you, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get turned around because I didn't reciprocate. And so to your point, what you're saying about you had to sit down and say, hey, wait a minute, why am I here? That's key. That really is key, because things are going to always happen to derail you. And on the flip side of that is, if you're moving toward where you're supposed to be, things are definitely going to happen to try to derail you, because there's an element out there that does not want you to get there.
Mm-hmm. Right. You gotta show that you're willing to work for it.
That's right.
Yes, there are things to push through.
You got to fight through it. That's right. You got to fight through it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's the VAVO shift has been instrumental for me in my life. And again, I teach it. I've taught it for decades. I've instilled it in you, which is, I think, why you're now able to turn around and do the same thing. And I think it's important for everybody to know. Like, very few people, huh?
I was saying I want to touch on that too.
Okay. Well, very few people start out where they want to end up. I'll just put it there. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was just going to say, you talking about like the VAVO shift and how I was talking, this was earlier today too, where I was saying there's some things that I felt like I got through osmosis.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. But like the one thing about the VAVO shift was, I mean, I was young, but I was alive when you started, really focusing in on that process.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it was, like, even just talking about, of course, like parenting or lineage or all those kind of things, because I was able to see you do that at the age that you were at when you started focusing on the VAVO shift. And even now, like, we see some fruits of that labor, right?
Right.
And that process and that mentality. And because I was able to see you do that at your age, I can now come in now at my age, even younger than you were at your age when you started looking at it. And now as your son, I can start focusing on that now. My VAVO shift can start really my career's just starting.
Right.
In my early 20s, just got out of college. And so just going through that process is not only helpful for you, but other people can see that as well, and the impact that can have, the impact that can have on your children or their children's, like their children. And it just allows things to keep moving forward after each generation. So I am happy that I was able to see that at a young age so that I can apply it still at a decently young age.
And that's true. And as a parent, that's important. So if you got parents out there that are listening, live that life in front of your children that you want them to emulate, or that you want them to follow through on. And I think that's why it was important. Your mom and I always talked about being intentional in front of you. That's why I didn't try to hide a lot of stuff from you, because I wanted you to see the process, and I wanted you to see that everything don't just fall down in front of you. Some things you got to dig out of the mud, as you would always say. And so the VAVO shift is definitely something that's been alive and well and kicking in my life. And, again, I don't know if you ever get to the end of it, because at some point I told you earlier, you get sucked back in. And so even in getting sucked back in, realizing and understanding what you want out of life is important, and making sure that you can always document even what you're doing on your vocation that you want to use for your vacation is big.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Got anything else on the VAVO shift?
I think that I gave what I was thinking, I think.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool in the game. Well, until next time, Bum Podcast.
Bum Podcast.
Between you and me.
Between you and me. Holla.
Holla.